17th. The invocation will be by myself and the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Weekly. Could you please stand? In these trying times, please, Lord, just protect each and every one of our residents and all the citizens of this great country. May God bless the United States of America and King George County. Amen.
Please remain standing and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Weekly, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do. I would suggest under discussion items, you place budget discussion there because there needs to be some discussion whether what we're going to do for the budget work session that's scheduled for the 25th. So I think there should be some comment around that.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Do we have anybody in the public who would like to speak? Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at this time of the public hearing. Seeing that, do we have anybody online? Seeing that we have no public comment, I will close it and we will take reports from members of the board. Mr. Parker.
Last week, I attended a meeting to just discuss zoning opportunities or rezoning opportunities for the King George Gateway, just to hear what they're thinking about on behalf of the sewer authority, kind of get a feel of what they're thinking about doing, so we can see if we have the proper volume for water flows as well as sewer flows. That's still obviously in discussions and has to go through the Board of Supervisors, but we were there for that.
Thank you. Ms. Kupka?
No report.
Mr. Bennett?
On March 4th, I attended the budget work session with all of my colleagues, and I'll save any comments I have about that until we talk about the budget. That's all, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Mr. Morris?
No report, ma'am.
All right. Chair has no report at this time, but I want to thank all of our Water and Service Authority customers for bearing with us in this time. And if you have any calls or concerns, just contact Mr. Weekly. And thank you to our staff for doing the best they can. Thank you. All right, consent agenda?
Move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion?
Madam Chair, if I may interject
Yes.
before you vote on it, I always like to point out any big ticket items. And I know, Madam Chair, you and I spoke of it at the agenda meeting, but the second warrant item is a large item of $318,000. That is for debt payment. We do not make our debt payments all at one lump sum. They are spread out throughout the year. So that's why you see that high number for warrants.
Thank you for
Madam
that.
Chair.
Thank you for that clarification. So we had a motion, we had a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nay? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Report from the county attorney. Mr. Gregory? Thank you. Presentations and reports. Camstruck Water Meter Replacement Program.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. So I did not ask you to strike that, although they will not be here tonight. Due to all the health concerns, we have postponed the AMI meter replacement program presentation. I contacted Camstruck earlier on to let them know we will postpone it or bring it back. I think we're also going to have some discussions maybe later on in our budget discussion item this evening, but that has been postponed. You all have the information, though. I think it's useful information. I did provide, and I apologize, I had a typo in Mr. Kyle's name, but Mr. Kyle's is the lead. He's the point of contact for Camstruck. Feel free, if you want to send questions to me, I can submit on behalf and get answers, or if you'd like to contact Mr. Kyle's directly, he's waiting. I did inform him that the board would get his point of contact number. So it's a good opportunity to learn whether the program is moved forward this year, following year, or any years future. It's a good time to review that information because AMI is the program. Camstruck is one of many providers that offer it. So again, it's a good opportunity to look at the benefits and advantages that are outlined that would be true for any provider for the Service Authority's operations.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weekly. Do we have any action items?
No action items, Madam Chair.
So now we're up to discussion items, budget discussion. Mr. Weekly?
So, Madam Chair, thank you. Our next scheduled budget work session is for March 25th, 6 p.m. at Company 1. I know COVID-19 restrictions change regularly through the governor's office, through our federal offices as well. And the question becomes, does the board wish to have that meeting still on March 25th? What I was going to suggest to the board of directors tonight is to cancel that meeting, not only, as we figure out meeting requirements, but primarily let me go back through the budget as was presented and see if there are some areas to take in considerations, the economic downturn that we will probably go through, and see if there's any trimming or adjustments that can be made, and bring that back to the board for suggestions. What I would suggest to you, and you all are going to get ready to have a discussion on this, is let me go back and do that trimming, cancel your meeting on the 25th. I can come back the earliest at April 7th, what would be our next scheduled business meeting, and have future discussions. I think part of the discussions tonight, I know Mr. Bennett will have some comments on this as well. The question will become, do we want to have our budget work sessions at our regular meeting? Would you all like to do 2-on-1s? And obviously there will be one remaining member. I would present the same information that I go back and retool and carve out the budget to each those 2-on-1s and that final 1-on-1, and ultimately come back to that final board meeting. And if the consensus is had, I will present that to a board as a whole, and you would vote up or down if that's the budget we want to put out for public advertisement. So those are the comments that I have, recommending canceling the March 25th meeting, allowing staff, that's myself and others, go back through, and if there's any carving to do that in respect to the revenues and expenditures. So that's the discussion I had around it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any feelings, thoughts? Mr. Bennett?
I agree with Mr. Weekly, Madam Chair. I think we should cancel the March 25th budget work session. We should plug that discussion in at the end of our next regularly scheduled meeting on April 7th. And my suggestion would be that we limit ourselves to a total of 1 hour so we don't bleed over into the time for the Board of Supervisors. If we're not done by then, we can do, as Mr. Weekly suggests, have some smaller group meetings. But I don't think there's that much left to do. So my suggestion would be we can limit our meetings to one less.
How does everybody else feel about that?
I concur with Mr. Bennett.
As do I.
Same, I concur.
Okay, so I guess that would be directive is our April 7th board meeting will discuss what we need to discuss about the budget.
Okay, so just so I'm tracking, I'll go back through, make the adjustments. We can send emails out well in advance. That way, if there's some comment, we can go through and do some further tweaking. And then the 7th, I will present that latest version, and then we'll go through. Okay.
Could I make a suggestion? Anything you change on the budget from what we've talked about before, highlight it in a different color,
Okay.
so that we know, or note it some way so that the changes are easy to pick up.
Good idea.
Okay, good suggestion. Was the summary page I provided last time, where I put the line item, the number, and the adjustments, was that helpful? Was that format helpful?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe I'll carry through with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also one more thing, if I may, Madam Chair, can we make sure, obviously it's up to citizens if they want to participate at this point, but can we also make sure to notify them that that budget work session has been canceled and it will be included in our regular meeting? Ms. Dodge?
Half our budget citizen group is right
Thank you.
there. So Ms. Dodge, consider yourself informed.
Absolute. I will email Ms. Dodge and Mr. Lynch. If I don't hear back in the next day or so, I will reach out by phone. Obviously, Ms. Dodge is in attendance tonight, but yes, ma'am, good point.
And make sure they can also provide feedback to you ahead of time, so we have all of our questions ready to go on April 7th.
Absolutely. Yes, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I have one more thing I just want to throw out real quick to the group. I've been thinking about the AMI, the Camstrup water meter replacement program. When I first heard about this, I think it's a great idea. So don't misunderstand me. I think it's something we should do. But the more I think about it, I don't think we should do it in this coming budget year. I think we've had so much trouble understanding what our revenue is. I think in Mr. Weekly's first budget, we got a pretty good handle on our expenses, our operations, our maintenance, our repairs, the DEQ items. I thought we had a very accurate and honest attempt to figure out what all of those numbers would be. And then we raised rates and we took some action on the revenue side. But we've had so many billing problems, I'm not clear if where we are on revenue. And before we think about a $1.8 million purchase with all the attendant borrowing, I think we ought to get a better handle on where we are in terms of revenue. And for that, I think we need to let muni billing run for about a year. It's about to start up 1st of April, I believe. So that's my suggestion. We're not going to have to decide that tonight. And if you guys disagree, I'll love you just as much. But it seems to me it's a little bit too much too soon, given where we are on revenue. And that doesn't even speak to the uncertainty in the economy coming in the next month or two or however long that may be. So it just strikes me as it's just too much too soon to go in that direction for that price tag. The other thing going on, and I know the supervisors are not having their public hearings right now, so the village's development is not going to be determined, which is key to our decision on a new plant at Perkins Corner. So it seems to me that what we do there, we might need to have a little better idea where we're going there before we borrow almost $2 million for something else. Just my 2 cents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Week and I had spoken earlier about making sure that he has to buy some water meters for the connections that we anticipate, right, 50, and we make sure that those are the newer water meters as opposed to the older. So we do need to buy a few for the 50 plus. You said 20, right, as a buffer?
So we've got some options. Part of the areas I'm gonna go back in and carve. We had outlined in that particular expense item 150 meters. 50 would be programmed for the expected connections. So I plan on slicing that down to 100 or 75. So that would give you either a 25 or 50 buffer, depending on the number that you would have. That would be absolute needed to be replaced, not just part of a replacement program. I would like to also add, Madam Chair, for just knowledge for the budget discussions, I have sent the budget as presented or from last time over to Davenport, our financial advisor. Cal and I had long discussions, and this was before things rapidly changed too. And so he's going to look at all that because there is a concern, building up. You've heard me talk about cash on hand. We did take a dip last year because expenditures and revenues where they lined up. So he's going to review all that and come back, with some thoughts and recommendation. That's what we pay them to do. He's going to take into consideration our standing with BRA, the debt service coverage to make sure we're meeting our obligations. In that conversation, he has just stated here tonight, amongst others, have concerns with the economy. So again, we'll go back through that budget. I just want to let you know that it's not just my eyes on it and your eyes on it. We're also sending it through our financial advisor.
All right, thank you for that clarification. All right, General Manager's report.
All right, the report is brief tonight. A lot of the time was allocated for the presentation prior. So what's not up on the board, some of the other items I've been working on is plan review, one of those which Mr. Parker alluded to. We get folks that come in for pre-application meetings. So Mr. Murphy came in, just seeing if he could do some rezoning at the gateway with remaining properties. But some of the current event items we have up there, I just wanted to mention real quick. A KG alert was sent out today. We already had the mailing insert that will be put into placed into the bills and mailed out, notifying our customers of the transition to muni billing, which is effective April 1st. And the letter is also placed on our website for viewing as well, but that will be received in the bills that come out this week. Brief Service Authority staff had a good meeting. I attended with the all department heads over at the EOC. Some of the members of the board were there as well, and just went over some guidelines From that meeting, I took back and printed out some CDC information, as well as shared the county travel policy that was just issued recently with staff. There's 3 remaining staff that I will touch base with tomorrow that they have been scheduled off. They will be returning to work tomorrow, so we will update them as well with all the latest information that's out there. Basically, we have canceled all non-essential travel. There were already some planned training events we've canceled. So for example, the VRWA conference I and other managers were going to attend in April has been canceled. Any classes they had signed up through other venues have been canceled. We have canceled the governor's school facility tour that we do every year. That has been canceled. As well as the scheduled tank washout of Arnold's Corner elevated water tank. That will not cause any water quality issues. That was part of our maintenance service agreement. But since there will be residents who are home now dealing with this health concern, as well as schools, so you have businesses, you have schools, you have residents doing extra cleaning, we do not want to reduce our capacity at this dire time. So we have postponed that activity and we'll reschedule that. The Service Authority, just like the county, issued a public statement on COVID-19. You all received that, and thank you for your comments, and we have posted it, just trying to keep the public informed, similar to what the county has followed through. And then this just recently changed this afternoon. I know I had conversation with HR about this. The governor issued an update, and part of that was per SEC guidelines that all utilities, so that's gas, that's power, and that's us for water and sewer, shall not, is the operative word, disconnect services for the next 60 days. That's to get folks the chance to get their finances and just our life, like all of us, in order. So we definitely don't want to be a burden. We will work with our customers, but that was the latest governor release. So Madam Chair, currently that wraps up my general manager's report.
Thank you. So do we have a motion for adjourn?
So if I may, since the canceling of the meeting on the 25th, our next meeting would be April the 7th at 5:30 in this room.
Thank you.
I move to adjourn to Tuesday, April 7th at 5:30 in the boardroom.
There was a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nay? Chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. I call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors of King George, Virginia. Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'd like to add, I'd recommend that the Board of Supervisors consider adding 03-10C, Public Safety COVID-19 Update to be presented by the Fire and Rescue Department. I'd also advise the Board consider scratching 03-11, Public Hearing Amendment to King George County Ordinance Adopting Electronic Summons System Assessment, and 03-11B, Public Hearing Rezoning Application Case Number 19-03-Z02. In addition, I'd recommend that the Board consider adding 03-12B, Adoption of Declaration of Emergency.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. One more thing, Board, Mr. Stonehill has requested to attend this meeting remotely in accordance with our meeting remote attendance policy. As of yesterday, a 30-30 travel policy for all county staff for those that have traveled out of the country has been implemented. For that reason, Mr. Stonehill will be calling in remotely. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. Can you hear us?
Yep, I got you.
All right, thank you. We have public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in accordance with to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. Do we have anybody online that would like to speak? Are they still there to speak?
He's messaging them, ma'am.
Okay, we'll just take a moment.
Ma'am, I recommend we move forward with the agenda, and Chris advises if they want to speak.
All right, thank you. We're going to move now, close public comment, and do reports from members of the board. Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On March 4th, I had the distinct honor and privilege to address King George Middle School 7th grade civics classes on the roles of local government along with the King George Treasurer, Mr. Randy Jones. I enjoyed sharing my trek of what inspired me to be involved with local government, how I reached my office, and a short description of my role. What I enjoyed most was the interaction and fielding questions from the students. The main idea I tried to impress upon them was that they too can get involved. I explained how public comment works, how they can download our meeting agendas and see exactly what we are deliberating and lend a voice even as middle schoolers. I'd like to thank Ms. Vecchio for the invitation and all the teachers and staff who put this panel together. Thank you to Principal Jennifer Collins, who dropped in during her busy day to observe. She has a fine staff and school to be proud of. To my neighbors, we as a community must never bow to fear or hysteria. While the situation we are facing together is real, there are elements at work that could throw us into chaos if we do not maintain our ability for reason. There is absolutely no justification for runs on local grocers, especially the hoarding of such things as toilet paper. Avoiding large crowds and washing your hands are all great advice, but we must maintain our ability for deductive reasoning and ability to separate conscious caution from hysteria. As for our local government and operations, we are maintaining situational awareness while remaining consciously cautious. There are 5 supervisors, each with their own concerns and posture. As a board, I see a realistic and conscious approach to the situation in maintaining safety, security, and basic services to our citizens. Thank you to my colleagues, but most especially thank you to Dr. Young and his staff for their professionalism and poise during these times. With that, we all have our own responsibilities. No one knows you or your family's vulnerabilities better than yourselves. Stay informed, taking care of yourselves and those around you. We will weather the storm just as we have throughout history. To all our public safety officers, from the sheriff's office to fire rescue and emergency services, to our community nurses, doctors, and urgent care and hospital workers, to our county staff in all departments, thank you for your dedication and selfless service. We know you have families too, yet you go to work every day amid the uncertainty of the day to serve, protect, and keep public services functioning. You are our front line and deserve our deepest respect and gratitude. Thank you, and God bless. Something of a different topic from the coronavirus, but of critical nature to our county finances. The Fed is looking at cutting interest rates to anywhere between 0 to 2.5%. This could be a huge opportunity if we could capitalize on this move with another debt restructuring, refinancing for the county as well as for the service authority. I will be following this closely and considering bringing this up to my colleagues in the near future to possibly have Davenport look into options and if fiscal advantage can be taken. Yes, COVID-19 is of serious concern and the topic of the day, but we still have a responsibility to run our county. Our debt and finances are still real factors. Thank you for the honor to represent you, and please do not hesitate to email me should you have any questions or concerns. God bless. Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, I will not read my entire prepared report. I have emailed it to the Freelance Star and Project 94, and I will probably put something out on social media. I will just get to a few important points at the end. Last night, I attended meetings of the George Washington Regional Commission and FAMPO. I exercised great care in maintaining social distance. The Virginia Department of Health came and presented updated information to us. They advised that their website is updated around noon every Monday through Friday. So to keep up to date, check out their website. Virginia Department of Health is updating daily. So look in the early afternoon for those updates. Tomorrow, King George County Schools will begin offering grab-and-go meals at 5 locations from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Please visit the King George County Schools website for more information. I want to take a moment to recognize all of our King George County employees. Over the course of the past week, you have been presented with rules and guidelines that have changed virtually daily, yet you continue to serve our citizens and keep our government running. You truly make the county go, and that does not go unnoticed. Thank you to everyone for stepping up and doing your part to promote a safe and healthy environment. As for Community Cleanup Day, I feel at this point perhaps we should postpone that. I hope that people are getting out and enjoying our parks. Our county parks at this time remain open. Get outside, get some fresh air, get some exercise. Feel free just with your family group to go clean a park if you want, anytime that the kids don't have school would be something fun to do. And lastly, to our citizens, please know that your Board of Supervisors is doing everything we can to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of our community. Adopting a local emergency is a financial tool at our disposal to do so. These are extraordinary times, and we all need to work together, even while maintaining distance if necessary, like we are here tonight, to get things done. Please take care of yourselves and your families, and let's all remember we are a community that cares. Thank you again to all of you in our community for the opportunity to serve you. Please don't hesitate to contact me with your cares and concerns for our community.
Thank you, Ms. Kupka. Mr. Granger?
Yes, ma'am. I'll endeavor to be brief. I'd just like to say thank you to all the citizens. I've received a number of correspondence asking about canceling meetings. At the end of the day, we still have to run the county. There's business to be done. With that in mind, though, as you can see from our agenda, we are removing those items which are not absolutely critical to move forward with right now in order to try to keep them as short as possible and to minimize the types of items that might be bringing a big crowd out. With that said, I'd like to say thank you to all the citizens who are still attending by teleattendance. Thank you for staying involved. Ms. Dodge, thank you for being here as well. But I appreciate everyone still being involved with the community as well. So thank you for that, everyone. And thank you to the staff for continuing to just work your way through this. It is a moving target that we're working with. And so thank you for being flexible and continue to serve this community. I really do appreciate it. And thank you to my colleagues and Dr. Young. I appreciate all of your wisdom from everyone here to help find the right way forward. And I think we're finding the right way forward. So thank you, everyone. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Mr. Stonehill?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just letting you know, I did travel to Mexico, and I have been back here for 11 days with no health issues. Mexico is not a hot spot, but since we're abiding by the new county regulations, that's why I am here at home. So, quick board report, just, I guess Tuesday, we're at the EOC here at the county where we all got together to try to figure out some game plan to combat this flu that we've got going around. Everybody had great ideas, and Dr. Young did a great job over there, kind of spearheading everything and getting everything going. And then on Saturday, the President's Day in Belgrade, so it was a great time to get outside, pretty good. And thank you so much for all the people that did go out and brave it and come. It was kind of a interesting experience to meet Mr. and Mrs. Madison. So, and then the other night I did, I guess it was last night or Sunday night, attended Rob Whitman's town hall call-in reference the COVID problem, and he had his crew of doctors on board and everything. And, you know, it just seems like, you know, they're all hoping that once the weather warms up a little bit and keep away from each other, and this will all be done shortly. And they did stress on general precautions, staying away from sick people, washing your hands 90 to 120 minutes between washings. And just do common sense, eat well, stay hydrated, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stonehill. All right, since we last met on March 3rd, 2020, the world and what can be considered normal has been totally altered. I was returning back from the NACO Legislative Conference with fresh ideas based on everything gathered from this awesome opportunity to network among my peers from all over the country. The spread of a virus called COVID-19 had just entered the United States. Turn the page to today, and we are in a national state of emergency. It is a time not seen in generations on a national level. All the meetings, teleconferences, and the like that I participated in seemed long ago. They dealt with county business that was supposed to come before us in the next month and will again. I have spoken with numerous constituents of the Shiloh District and from all over the country and county, and will continue to keep open lines of communication at this trying time. This past Saturday, we honored the presidents that have had strong ties to King George, and especially our fourth president, James Madison, at his place of birth, Belle Grove. The Darnells, Will Gravitz, Michelle Washington, Kim Wilson, and Nick Miner all put on a nice event as part of our 300th celebration. The actors portraying President Madison and First Lady Dolly Madison gave awesome performances. The audience is not happy. And spoke words that ring true today. From Mrs. Madison, I quoted, "Some that I see before me are too young to remember that these kinds of fears are periodic. They happen, and we cannot control what happens in our lives. There will be tragedies, there will be crises, but the only thing we can control is how we face these sorts of fears. We need to display courage, self-sacrifice, and selfishlessness that a crisis demands of us." She lived through the 1793 great epidemic in Philadelphia, which was the mystery yellow fever, in which many were carried away, including her in-laws and first husband. It tested every man, woman, and child and showed what each was made of. Today, with the concerns of COVID-19, we need to remember the precautions that have been issued from the CDC, VDH, and local health departments, like cleaning your hands often, avoid close contact, stay home if you're sick, cover coughs and sneezes, clean and disinfect surfaces, doorknobs, tablets, and phones. If sick, call your doctor first to get medical advice and not overwhelm the hospitals and expose others to your illness unless absolutely necessary. Know that the staff of King George County is doing our best to keep you safe and informed in this time of difficulty. We are working hard to keep abreast of this very fluid and uncharted situation. We are blessed to have an amazing staff at the county offices, school system, water and sewer authority, parks and rec, Smoot Library, landfill, and maintenance and properties. Our law enforcement and emergency services continue to do what they do best to weather the storm. I thank them for their effort, and I am grateful for their service. They are working long hours to come up with innovative solutions to help the citizens of King George. I've also asked our county administrator to help coordinate links on our website to help people connect with available services, helpful information, and up-to-date material to keep the citizenry informed. Mr. Madison also spoke in part of his speech and stated it is certainly a nature of a concept which is hard for people even now, and he was pretending he was in 1820, which was 200 years ago, that all we do is not part of some grand design, but all that we do is dependent upon which each and every one of us do. Our success is our collective success. I ask that you look out for your neighbors, your family, and your friends, and lend a helping hand where needed. King George is open for you, the citizen, but we do encourage everyone to do business by email and phone when possible. God bless the citizens of King George, and please be safe. Thank you. Hold on one second. Move to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Whoop. Forgot the delay. Motion carries. All right, next up, constitutional officers. Presentation by Chris Giles, King George County Sheriff.
Good evening, Madam Chair and the rest of the board. I come before you tonight to request that you adopt the following resolution. Whereas the King George County Sheriff's Office wishes to honor and recognize the commitment and dedication of exemplary leadership of Steve F. Dempsey, retired sheriff, King George County. Whereas Steve F. Dempsey started his career in law enforcement in 1980 as a deputy sheriff of King George County and progressing through the ranks of sergeant, captain, major, ending his career as a highly esteemed and respected sheriff in the Commonwealth of Virginia, retiring on December 31st, 2019. Whereas Steve F. Dempsey has been recognized for his lifetime of public service, having served in various capacities at the Rappahannock Regional Criminal Justice Academy, Rappahannock Regional Jail, Special Olympics of Virginia, Virginia Sheriff's Association, and an extended list of distinguished service. Some of his most notable contributions were in the pursuit of excellence from the Virginia Law Enforcement Professional Standards Commission, being an accredited agency. In addition, he was a vital part of the Lisk-Silva Task Force, the Tri-County Narcotics Task Force, and the Distracted Driving Program, and the Child Fatality Task Force, just to name a few. Whereas Steve F. Dempsey was a King George County Sheriff's Office first canine handler with his German Shepherd canine partner Bandit. After 3 months of training and graduating top of his class at the Metropolitan Police Canine Academy, Steve F. Dempsey and canine partner Bandit began patrolling King George County in 1981. This was an effective duo of tracking and apprehending criminals for King George and the surrounding counties that were without a canine program. Following Bandit's retirement, the canine program continues to remain in place today, following the policies and procedures implemented by Steve F. Dempsey. Now, therefore, be it resolved, King George County Board of Supervisors on the 17th day of March 2020 hereby thanks retired Sheriff Steve F. Dempsey for his 39 years of service and lifetime commitment in law enforcement to the citizens of King George County. Be it further resolved, the King George County Board of Supervisors on the 6th day of April 2020 recognized the Sheriff's Office Canine Kennel as the Steve F. Dempsey Kennel. to preserve its professional reputation for future law enforcement for canine handlers. I ask you now to adopt this presentation, or adopt this resolution that I've presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Can I assume that you'll do it upright and frame it for him when it gets presented?
The resolution?
Yes,
Absolutely.
please, thank you.
I wasn't gonna give him a piece of paper. Yeah, thanks. All right.
Definitely deserves it.
We need
Oh,
to vote.
we need a vote, yeah.
I know, hold on. So we had a second discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Absolutely.
No nays, chair votes aye. Thank you. Mr. Gregory, we have a report from the county attorney.
Briefly, Madam Chair. Situation here and the legal issues concerning the present situation are complex and novel in many ways, and so we're dealing with that and counseling you all and Neiman on that and all that all the way through it, and we'll continue to do so. But as the county transitions to a new county attorney, I wanted to let you know that despite that transition, I believe that the new county attorney is extremely capable. I've known him for a number of years. I don't want to steal any of your thunder about your announcement later this evening, but I know that people may be concerned about transitioning in this kind of a situation, but the new county attorney is experienced and very, very capable, and I want to give everybody confidence that he'll be able to step in without much of a problem and handle things going forward. I also want to let you know that I'm sorry that I have to do this remotely, but I want to let you all know that I have very much enjoyed serving as county attorney for King George County these past 7 years. It's been an extraordinary opportunity. I appreciate it. And wanted to just thank you for that. Also, we'll be working with the new county attorney and the administration going forward on transition, so we're not just leaving you in the lurch. There will be some time for transition, and we'll be happy to work with the board and the administration and the new county attorney going forward. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. All right. Presentations and reports. Dr. Young, Dominion Power Broadband Initiative.
Yes, ma'am. Will be presenting this presentation as Dominion Power and all the parties involved have been asked to not come to King George County and give third-party presentations. So this will be abbreviated. I'm pleased to announce the fact that we may see a viable solution to addressing our last-mile broadband issues. Last week, I was contacted by Dominion Power with a request to discuss a broadband project that they are working on. We hosted that meeting with Dominion Power, the Northern Neck Electrical Co-op, and All Points Broadband. During the meeting, we were advised of the fact that since the General Assembly adopted Code 56-585.1.9, pilot program for broadband capacity to unserved areas of the Commonwealth, 2 sessions ago, Dominion Power has been working on an initiative to leverage their right-of-way across the Northern Neck to run aerial fiber that can be accessed by private ISPs who target last-mile households. Dominion is referencing this right-of-way fiber as the middle mile. While the Northern Neck, according to the legislation, utilities will be granted projects that only address households that are currently not served by telecommunications companies like Atlantic Broadband. Due to Dominion's early studies, this equates to nearly 14,000 households in the Northern Neck. According to the partnership, Dominion and the Northern Neck Electric Co-op will run fiber along their electric lines to the critical infrastructure, an example, substations and transformers throughout the Northern Neck. This fiber will be used to bring their equipment online while also providing a tap for All Points Broadband to branch off the trunk and run last-mile fiber to underserved households. Dominion estimates the project will lead to over 300 miles of new fiber being run in the Northern Neck. Frankly, I can assure you, that this is a win-win situation for both our energy partners and for King George County. This project will be accomplished via a three-phased approach. Phase 1, which is current until June 2020, All Points Broadband will conduct a needs study for each locality, endorsement of an MOU, and submit a CDBG grant application. Phase 2, which is July 2020 through December 2020, there will be a network design and a petition to the State Corporation Commission for approval. Phase 3, January 2021 until complete, Dominion and Northern Neck Electric Co-op will build the middle mile, and All Points Broadband will deploy the last mile fiber. As you can see, this is a very aggressive timetable. This escalation is built on the fact that the legislation requires any approved petition to be initiated within 6 months, and the legislation will expire in 3 years after the first petition is approved across the Commonwealth. In addition, Dominion is being driven by the confidence that they have gained through 2 years of conversation with the Commonwealth and the favorable nods that they have received to pursue state funding. The last component to their plan is the recruitment of local partners. According to the agencies, they would like to establish a regional partnership via a memorandum of understanding with King George, Westmoreland, Richmond County, Northumberland, and Lancaster County. The agencies have already spoken with Northern Neck Planning District Commission and on the agenda for board meetings in Richmond and Lancaster. I should also note that the MOU has already been approved by the Westmoreland County government. According to the MOU, the counties will provide local support to the initiative as needed. Thus far, local support is defined as building public support, providing the agencies any previous studies to assist with their exploration, joining the petition to the State Corporate Commission, and writing a local CDBG grant per county. The agencies stress that the CDBG grant will not exceed $40,000 per locality threshold, thus not meeting the program's requirements for a local match. However, I do believe that in the event that there is a gap between the state funding and private funding that's being allocated to this initiative, we can expect to see requests coming for local funding, and I'd estimate in between $50,000 to $100,000. But again, I want to stress that according to the MOU, this isn't being discussed at all or being brought on the table, but just for situational awareness, I felt it prudent to advise the board that I can expect that we probably see some gap like that coming down and to be prepared for that. I'm cautiously optimistic about this opportunity and highly recommend the board approve this partnership. This optimism is derived from the fact that this plan has key players like Dominion and Northern Neck Electric Co-op coming to the table versus startups to address this critical problem. In addition, the talent that APB brings to the table, I think is very relevant. Just a quick run through a couple of slides. I'm not going to go through the whole presentation, but just to graphically depict the plan for Dominion Power. Basically, I provided you all this overview. A little bit about All Points Broadband. Just state that they are not a startup. They actually have an established business and have been for, I believe, the last 7 years. And they already have operations in Kentucky, West Virginia, Maryland, and Kentucky. This is, again, just a review of what I just discussed about the Dominion Pilot Program. This is key information right here. As you can see, this purple line was the original plan for Dominion Power to run their new fiber to their existing substations and critical infrastructure throughout the Northern Neck. But since this new legislation has been approved by by the General Assembly, and they got this initiative with APB, they are willing to go from moving that line to actually creating this new footprint, which is deliberate because, as you can see, the little dots represent underserved households. They'll run that fiber right away as close to these underserved households as possible. And then once that gray line is ran through these underserved households, the purple circle represents their critical infrastructure. As you can see, the red lines and the green lines represent the last mile fiber that will be ran by All Points Broadband. So as you can see, they will aggressively target all these underserved households that's represented by the orange dots throughout the Northern Neck to include King George County. When I asked them, well, what is your all's intent? Are you defining King George County as Northern Neck, South King George County, or just a portion of King George County? And what they told us was, no, upon the joining of the MOU, our intent is to try to address 100% of the underserved households in King George County. Again, this is the request for local support. These are the expectations that Owl Point Broadband will be required to do in accordance with the MOU. This includes them actually doing the feasibility study, them actually conducting a feasible design and engineering of infrastructure, and of course, putting in a plan in place where they will actually sustain and maintain a self-sustaining fiber network that will not rely on any additional local support or or support from the state. I discussed the phased approach, and I discussed the community development block program. Again, timelines for phase 1. And that completes the presentation. So board, with that understanding, I'd highly recommend that the board authorize the county administrator and the county attorney to execute an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with All Points Bulletin, Northern Neck Electric Co-op, Dominion Power, and our participating localities in the Northern Neck.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Dr. Young, could you please forward this presentation to the board?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to.
I understand.
Yeah, I'll put it on your thumb drives because it's too big to email.
Okay.
So I'll put it on thumb
Perfect,
drives
thank
in
you.
your mailbox.
Can you also provide a contact if we want to have more further information?
Certainly, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion? Mr. Stonehill? You good?
Yeah, Dr. Young, what was the cost that you said possibly?
Yes, sir. That cost that I'm estimating, and it's my estimate alone, no discussions has been had with Northern Neck or APB. They have not requested this, but my estimations, which I believe would be around $50,000 to $100,000 if there was a requirement for local funding to support this. I believe that that's considering all the other efforts that we have participated in to try to bring broadband to King George County, and consider how high our priority is to King George County citizens, that $50,000 to $100,000 is definitely worth the investment if we can actually get that return of bringing broadband to 100% of our households.
Yep. You broke up on audio of the cost, but thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nay?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Next up, public safety compensation presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And some of this information will be redundant, please forgive me, but I'm doing it for the benefit of the general audience on GoToMeeting and the general public. There's been a public safety arms race that has arrived at our doorstep. Everyone has read the papers, and I'm sure that you're aware of recent pay restructuring taking place in the region for our public safety professionals. In some instances, the salaries for deputies and firefighters have increased by $15,000 annually. This drastic surge in salaries has led to our fire and rescue department not only having issues with recruitment, but also facing threats of losing EMTs and firefighters to our neighboring localities. As you know, turnover costs money. However, in the public safety field, these costs are increased exponentially. Therefore, I believe it is in our best interest to take a hard look at developing a response to the new market. More importantly, we need to be prepared to accept the costs associated with addressing this issue. To further illustrate the impacts of this domino effect, here's a snapshot of where we now currently stand in the market and compared with our neighboring localities. I sat down with the county sheriff, our fire rescue department, the director of finance, and the human resource director. We hosted a series of meetings to first assess how the new market for public safety professionals would affect us, And second, how we will respond. We came to the conclusion that, number one, we must maintain an effective public safety workforce in order to address the needs of our community. Number two, as communities grow within our region and in King George, the need for public safety professionals will only increase. And number three, we've confirmed without a doubt that neighboring and regional localities are actively attempting to recruit our certified and tenured employees that we invested time and money in, with offering them higher salaries and career promotion opportunities. Therefore, we deemed it necessary to develop a response to this issue. The tenets of the plan are displayed on this slide. Number one, we simply cannot compete with salaries of larger localities, especially those localities with the budgets to continually raise compensations in response to our plan. Number two, therefore, we decided that there were two opportunities where we could exploit and leverage our response. While many of our competing localities focused on salary increases, we decided to focus on quality of life benefits and leveraging non-recurring expenditures. Number three, in addition, we had to narrow the scope of individuals who will be identified in our plan in order to maximize our dollars and their impact on the county response. Therefore, the compensation structure was simply focused on the professionals listed above, which includes sworn fire and rescue paramedics, firefighters and EMTs, sworn sheriff's deputies to include the court security, SROs, the animal shelter, and 911 communication center operators. What I would like to stress that this plan will not include administrative staff, custodial staff, or support staff. And not only we're doing this to make sure that we can maximize the impact of a new compensation structure, but it simply would not be fair if we have administrative staffs in the sheriff's office being compensated at a higher pay, whereas we have administrative staffs across multiple county departments and they're receiving equal pay. Finally, we decided that the lion's share of our plan would focus on retaining employees versus recruiting employees. As stated before, turnover costs money. For public safety, turnover costs are exponential. For example, King George County Fire and Rescue will invest $20,000 to $40,000 on average to hire, pay, train, and equip a single public safety employee in order to meet the minimum job performance requirements. And this training can take up to 1 to 3 years to fully complete. So when one of our tenured and trained employees are actually recruited by another locality, we're losing significant amounts of money and time invested. So with that understanding, we decided that there were 3 problem sets that we were trying to address with our response to the compensation structure. Number 1, recruitment. 2, retention. And number 3, retirement. The first of benefits that we're recommending be approved is a 3 to 5% pay increase for our public safety professionals, effective immediately. This will be based on years of service. And in the event that we do a county employee pay raise this fiscal year, then this will be in addition to that pay raise, and they will still be afforded the opportunity to have a pay increase with the county employees. Number 2, we will implement certification pay, which King George County currently does not have a program. This will replicate the same specialty pay that's offered by our neighboring localities. We'll use this to recruit and retain talent with critical skill sets. As you all can see, these critical skill sets aren't usually brought to the table. We actually have Chief Moody and his leadership send our professional firefighters and EMTs to these schools at the cost to the county. Upon their return, they then earn their certifications. Then they're eligible for promotion. However, other localities are actually paying these certifications without consideration for a promotion or anything. So this is additional pay that's offered to them, and I highly recommend that we replicate that same effort in King George County. This will be coming at a cost of $152,000. And just to go back, the 3 to 5% pay increase will come at a cost of $274,210. Third, what we recommend is changing our VRS multiplier from 1.7% to 1.85%. The VS multipliers are county match to our employees' 457 plans. Currently, the county contributes 1.7% of an employee's annual salary towards their retirement. For public safety professionals in other neighboring localities, they actually have a 1.85% multiplier. Naturally, this is of high interest to tenured and more importantly, experienced firefighters, deputies, and paramedics. If the board decided to move forward on that, that would come at a cost of $205,000. This is the keynote of our compensation response, offering free health insurance for for public safety professionals that have at least 10 years of service to King George County. The reason that we decided to pursue this because this is not being enacted around any of our neighboring localities. In addition, it's a non-recurring expenditure. It does not add to the cost for benefits. It does not add to county costs for annual pay raises. However, we can expect to see this expense rise because naturally as our healthcare costs for county employees rise, so would their healthcare expenses. However, we believe that this is the tool that our fire rescue chief and his recruitment team would need to actually have a competitive advantage over our neighboring communities. This will come at a cost of $134,680 to $355,120. The $355,120 is based on the worst case scenario. That is, if all the employees that currently are on single plans or don't have county insurance because they have insurance through their spouse or they have dual, they decided that, hey, well, King George County is going to offer us free health insurance. Well, all of them are going to come and join the family plan, which is the most expensive plan for King George County. However, after speaking with human resources and finance, we don't believe that that's the case. We believe that, yes, we will see some changeover and change between plans, but there's still firefighters that are single. They're not going to qualify for a family plan or pay for a family plan. There's still some individuals that, and due to their circumstances, it's more financially beneficial for them to have a dual plan versus paying for a financial plan. So the current state, if the plans remain in place, it'd be $134,000. But if everybody went to the family plan, which is highly unlikely, it come at a cost of $355,000. So for planning factors, we decided to go with the worst case scenario when coming up with total cost for the plan. For the whole compensation packet. Finally, the second priority and legacy program for, marquee program for King George County is the 20 for 20 program. This comes at a cost of $100,000. What we would advise is King George County offer public safety employees with at least 20 years of service to King George County, not 20 years of service in the public safety field, but 20 years of service to King George County to be offered $20,000 paycheck upon retirement. And here's why. Public safety employee, well, first, county employees have what you call a 30-60 retirement plan. At 30 years of service and at the age of 60, you are eligible for retirement. But public safety employees have what you call a 50-25 plan. Public safety employees at the age of 50 are eligible to retire after 25 years of service in local government. What that leaves us at is where we have we have individuals that are eligible for retirement long after, eligible for retirement, but long after they're eligible for retirement, they decide to stay on board with King George County. And so we end up with employees that sometimes cannot keep up with the physical demands of the position that they're occupying. The reason why they do this is because they can't afford the health insurance. And as you all know, they had to try to cover that gap between county health insurance and Medicare, which is at age 65. So there's basically this 15-year gap. So what we advise is that the county offer $20,000 to encourage those employees to retire and to help offset healthcare costs for them in their retirement. Why would the county want to do that? Well, it's a couple of reasons. Number one, the longer that these employees stay on the books with King George County, we're paying higher salaries because of their tenure and their years of service. If we were able to encourage those employees to retire, then we can have salary savings and vacancy savings. In addition, if these more tenured employees retired, then there would be advancement opportunities for younger employees. They could see themselves one day having the opportunity to be a battalion chief or a senior deputy or chief, deputy chief, just basically having opportunities to advance. If they see that there's opportunities for them to advance within King George County, then we don't have to worry about them going to a surrounding locality because they don't feel that the advancement opportunities are here. Again, this is cost is based on the worst case scenario as well. We're not currently experiencing 5 public safety employees retiring per year. However, we utilize that as a good solid estimate on what we would expect to see if we decide to implement this program. So with that being said, I reposted this graphic depicting our 3 problem sets of recruitment, retention, retirement. And then in blue, it shows the actions that this plan takes and identifies that target audience that we're trying to attract. Number 1 to 0 through 3 years with a 3 to 5% pay increase in certification pay. Then, as you can see, our mid-careerists from 3 to 20 years, the VRS multiplier and free health insurance. And then finally, for our employees that are eligible for retirement, the 20 for 20 program. Or the total cost, worst case scenario, if this plan was adopted in its current form, will come at a cost of $1,086,330. It's my recommendation that given the current state of the national economy, the regional economy, and potentially the county economy, I'd recommend that the board currently only approve the 3 to 5% pay raise for our public safety professionals effective immediately. And then regarding the other portions of the plan, we'll continue to monitor the situation, have subsequent discussions and deliberations during our budget work sessions, and I'd recommend that the board approve that when we are sure that the county and the economy can fiscally burden that cost. So if the board is so moved, I would recommend the Board of Supervisors approve the presented pay increase for public safety professionals effective March 18th, 2020, and transfer $274,210 from the general fund balance to the general fund and appropriate these monies to public safety pay increases.
Madam Chair, before we entertain, would it be permissible, could I call up Chief Moody? I have some questions that I would like to hear from, and Sheriff Giles left, but maybe you could provide some clarity since you've had meetings with him, but I have a couple of questions if that's okay. Chief Moody, would you? Thank you, Chief. I'm sorry to put you in the hot seat, but I've been thinking about this for a while, so I came up with a couple of questions. First question, how many employees have you lost recently and in the past year?
Well, most recently, we have had 2 full-time positions that have submitted resignations. In fact, last Friday was their last day. Last Friday was their last day, and we have went through a recruitment process, and one recent new hire rescinded his offer of employment in order to take a job with Westmoreland County.
Okay.
As far as a year, I don't have that number right now. I do know since tracking for the past 2 years, since calendar year 2018, we've had 19 full-time positions turnover. 17 were resignations.
How many vacancies do you currently have right now?
Currently, we have 3 full-time vacancies.
Okay. Second question, what were your last recruitment numbers? I know you guys do these recruitment type trips or fairs or whatever. Like, has there been interest in King George County, or is it just not competitive.
So the last testing process and recruitment process we completed was back in November, December timeframe. We had roughly 44 applicants. Of those 44 applicants, 14 qualified. We invited all 14. We had 6 confirmed they would be there to attend the testing process. 5 showed up, 4 passed. 0 medics out of that entire recruitment process. And let me note this, that was prior to the public announcement of the Stafford County pay raises for public safety and Spotsylvania County prior to that.
Okay. And I had some other questions, but Dr. Young's slides covered those about how are we competing with surrounding localities and how much we're investing in the training equipment and so forth. But at the banquet, the annual awards banquet that we attended, you reported that calls were increasing. Can you rebrief that?
So I don't have the exact numbers, but in 2019, fire rescue calls, 911 calls increased over 200 more calls in 2019 than they did in 2018. In 2018, they increased over 150 more calls than they did in 2017. So we're seeing a trend of no shortage of our citizens and the public. And that's a key point too. Our calls, just like the sheriff's office, law enforcement calls, are not necessarily just related to the citizenry. It's the public in general. So anybody that has an emergency that falls within the confines of King George County, we're the responsible agency.
So how many people does it take to operate a shift? And I say that because I know there are certain guidelines or not guidelines, but restrictions and laws that you cannot pull out an ambulance or you cannot pull out a fire engine unless it's manned to a certain number. Are your shifts properly manned, or with these 2 resignations and recruiting issues, are we facing the potential of losing a shift?
Well, that's a good question, and what I'll tell you is when we in our department are fully funded, we are staffed at 15 positions spread between 3 stations within the county per day.
Okay.
We have 3 shifts: an A platoon, a B platoon, and a C platoon.
Mm-hmm.
Company 3, located in Fairview Beach, is our lowest staffed station.
Yep.
We have it at very minimum staffing. I have 2 firefighter medics there 24 hours a day. You can't put anything less than 2 people on an ambulance by law. You got to have a driver and you have to have an attendant. We use those same 2 people to if there's a fire call, they're getting off the ambulance and they're staffing the fire truck. If they're on an EMS call, EMS calls can take up to an hour and a half to 2 hours from the time we get the call to the time we get back to the station. So you can see there's a lot of void period and gap period from when there's a call. Oftentimes, our units are backfilling all the districts in the county. So it's not uncommon to have Company 3 from Fairview Beach answering a call past Route 3 over in the Shiloh District, for example. Or Company 2 from Dahlgren answering a call in Presidential Lakes. That can happen on a routine basis. The situation we're dealing with right now only highlights that importance with COVID-19 and how we're preparing. So I hope I answered that question.
You did, and I have a lot of concern about Fairview Beach in my district. The way that neighborhood is situated, with the wind coming right off the Potomac, the houses so close together. I mean, the blocks are right next to each other. if a fire breaks out and there's no one to respond, very quickly, we could lose a block, 2 blocks, of homes. So, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Chief. And unless anybody else has questions for Chief, I ask these questions because I appreciate Dr. Young's consciousness of the finances, but fire rescue, more importantly, paramedics and ambulances running in this county are critical. I don't think that's anything that could be compromised. I know I've been following the articles about what's going on in surrounding localities, and that we knew this was going to affect us and our numbers, especially with what's going on now. Our hospitals, our urgent cares, they're being taxed. And it may be regular illnesses, it may be associated with COVID, but just regular illnesses. Our paramedics have been and will continue to be until the future our doctors. Those ambulances are our hospitals right now. And I don't think that we could even take a chance of losing a shift, of losing ambulances. We just cannot take that chance, and it can happen overnight. These surrounding localities have approved their budgets. Like you said there's 10 people, correct? With active applications in other localities, is that number correct?
I have heard, I've heard rumor, I don't know whether that's factual or not.
Okay.
I've heard rumor of that. I will say, and Dr. Young kind of certainly hit the nail on the head in his presentation, and that is, it is no secret that these larger localities are aggressively trying to market for tenured, experienced people. I mean, even me myself, I get postcards from even as far away as Albemarle County.
Yeah.
Prince William County, Fairfax, and as these communities grow, there's going to be an increased need for these types of people to work nights, weekends, holidays, and all the undesirable times of the day to do the work of the public.
So I can't blame our firefighters or paramedics or sheriff's deputies to drive 10 minutes or 20 minutes down the road for $15,000 or $20,000 more a year. I would do it. They got families too, so I don't blame them for that, especially our trained and tenured staff that could resign, leaving after their 2-week notice and pick up because they're still certified in the Commonwealth of Virginia and start work in 2 weeks in a different county. And it can happen very quickly. I, for myself, and I wish Sheriff Giles was here because I was going to ask him about his numbers too.
I have those numbers, sir, if you want.
Okay, I would like to know how many vacancies does he currently have? And in the last 2 years, what has been the turnover rate?
I'm not sure about the vacancies. I can ask him about that, but I do know turnover. He had 2 sheriff's deputies that have turned over or has departed for King George County over the last 2 years. But he wants to stress that it wasn't over salaries, it was over different issues. However, he also wanted to stress that he has lost 2 911 communications officers, so the salaries, and he lost those to Westmoreland. So salaries are a severe concern for our 911 center operators. In addition to calls, I have the numbers that I'll gladly email to you all. But the calls and calls for service, just like in the fire and rescue department, has significantly increased for the King George County Sheriff's Office as well. So they're basically in the same boat. Just like chiefs getting calls 9 times out of 10, correct me if I'm wrong, chief, a deputy or someone's going to also likely to attend to those calls as well. So they're in the same boat and they're experiencing the increase in calls as well.
All right. Thank you, Chief. That's pretty much all I have. So to my colleagues.
Hold on.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chief. So you said 15 positions spread across 3 stations when you're fully funded by the board, right?
Fully staffed.
Fully staffed. So is that minimum staffing? That's the number you need that you're you're looking at the number of personnel you need, that's the minimum you need to, we don't want you to go below minimum staffing, is what I'm trying to say.
Correct, yeah, so.
How
we-
often, and how often does that happen?
You know, it just depends. You know, when you take in consideration vacancies, when you take in consideration illnesses, I have one that's on FMLA, female that's getting ready to have a baby. So there's, you know, when you add all these reasons of why you may have open positions, you know, there does have to be at a certain time, we do have a certain minimum level, but 15 is to answer your question, is what we desire. If we can have, if we have 15 people in operations that are there every day, then it certainly makes our job a whole lot easier to respond to calls. So, and as the community grows, we're going to have to continue to address this. But certainly this item right now is priority. I couldn't go to Dr. Young and request additional positions if we're not even in a competitive market. So we have to be in a competitive market, and that is of the utmost importance. And you know, we did a market study in 2017 as a county, but quickly we became out of the market from at least the fire rescue side of the industry.
Sure. And I would just point out to my colleagues, Chief, you gave us a little bit of historical data broken down by year, but if you all look at Chief Moody's monthly report at the end of the packet on page 187 dated March 4th, 2020, historic calls for service for the month of February 2018 was 253 for the month, 2019 was 276 for the month, and 2020 has been 295 for the month. So that fits with what you're saying, the pattern historically as well. So,
Correct.
so thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Stonehill, do you have anything online?
I just a little bit more about the sheriff's side, and from our conversation at our last budget meeting with Sheriff Giles, I think he was saying they were 6 down and that they had 3 going to the academy here in the future, with 2 possibly getting ready to leave as well. So I guess you're going to be back to 5. But they, it seems like, you know, they're very short as well. You know, they have a minimum of staffing of 3, you know, per on the shift. You know, they do get a trooper that's every now and then, that's there as well. But I know they're struggling with the same situations as fire rescue as well.
Yeah, I know Mr. Granger has a comment. Mr. Stonehill, did you have to continue? Do you have more?
I think Sheriff Giles actually might have just gotten on. If you, if there's a way to contact him.
Yes, that's what I was going to mention. After Mr. Granger asked his question, I was going to ask Sheriff Giles' comment. Mr. Granger?
I'm here.
Sheriff Giles, would you like to say something before Mr. Granger asks?
I just got on, so I don't even know what he asked. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Hold on a second. Mr. Granger had a couple questions, and then we can ask you some questions. Is that okay? Can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
Absolutely.
thank you. Mr. Granger.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Young, I had a couple questions in regards to fiscal impact in particular.
Yes, sir.
I know in previous budget work sessions, you had put an earmark down for the estimated cost of what you thought it might cost to address the current situation in regards to compensation for Sheriff's Department and Fire and EMS.
Yes, sir.
What was that earmark? I don't recall off the top of my head.
For compensation?
For addressing the current situation with what's going on, for going through this process, what we're going through right now.
Yes, sir. In our original budget work session discussions prior to current state of affairs, I had asked for an earmark of $370,000, but that's compensation for pay increases for all county employees. when we had the discussion, Chief Moody, Sheriff Giles, Human Resources, Finance, and myself were still in the works of developing and getting the right numbers for our compensation plan, and that's the number that we identified here. We had just arrived at a conclusion that this number, unfortunately, was after the budget work session. So these are the finite numbers that were actually, if approved, we would input into our budget impacts and present during subsequent budget work sessions.
Okay. The 274,000 for, so I heard you asking for us to appropriate funds in that dollar amount. So
Yes, sir.
what would the cost be next year for the following fiscal year? Because we're already so let me ask this, would this, because it would go into effect immediately, would it be retroactive pay throughout this whole fiscal year to back pay current members, or is this just the cost for the last 3 months of the fiscal year?
No, sir. This would just be the cost for March 18th through the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It's not retroactive. And what will happen is, if we do move forward with county employee pay increases, then yes, of course, that number would be figured into the compensation for all county employees, and you'd have to expect to pay benefits on a pay increase of $274,210. Just some quick math, that would add an additional
It's about $1 million, right? It's roughly, well, a little less.
about $90,000 in benefits.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a little confused then. If this is to cover for about 4 months worth of time, I would assume then for a whole year's worth of time, these rates, it would be about $750,000. So I'm just asking what the impact of the budget for next year would be.
I'm tracking, sir, and I can.
Because obviously we want to trot back any raises, so I just want to make sure we know what we're getting into.
And
for
correct
next
me
fiscal
if I'm wrong. Let me ask Amanda. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this for annual or is this through the end of the fiscal year? End of the fiscal year. Tracking. I'd have to do the number crunchings, which we plan to. We have to for the budget anyway, to determine how that's going to impact the salaries for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, I just bring it up so my colleagues can think about there will be an impact larger than this to next year to the budget overall for what this year's is.
Yes, sir. And without a doubt, but I can tell you that understanding our numbers and understanding where we financially stand, I'd be comfortable with recommending that to you all with the understanding that it is going to have that subsequent impact on the fiscal year 2020 budget.
Tracking, and
yes, sir.
I'm amenable to that, and you know this is important to make sure that we are competitive. We want to make sure we provide for the safety and welfare of our citizens, and that's what we need to do. My last question was in regards to the healthcare, paying the healthcare costs. Did you have that as a non-recurring cost?
Yes, sir. I stated that it's a non-recurring expenditure, meaning that you don't have to pay benefits or annual salary increases on it. However, I do advise that there is the potential for that to rise, and I mean, it's likely going to rise when we have those years that the health insurance plan for county employees increases.
I guess what I am confused by is the term non-recurring. I think of like non-recurring as something, for instance, like a bonus, where you pay it one time and that's it, whereas this is going to be, and I know we're not looking necessarily to adopt this tonight, but this would be year over year. I mean,
Yes,
so
sir.
the county would then continue to pay. So to me, that appears to be a recurring cost. And so I was just looking, unless I'm missing something, and someone can point out to me why this is a non-recurring expenditure.
No, you're absolutely correct, sir. That's a bad term.
Okay.
In fact, I've changed that term probably 6 times prior to doing this presentation. Just the lack of, a good description of what we're calling these expenditures. And I guess I should have said a non-recurring on benefits.
Not
expenditure.
compounding.
Yeah,
I would
not
say
compounding.
I could understand that rates could go up and that would have an impact. But
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yeah, that's a better
Oh,
word.
I'm sorry. I see a hand up from Ms. Samuel.
Non-compounding.
Did you want to comment?
Address something.
Yes.
So to clarify,
Yes, ma'am.
we were discussing again about the salary cost. So what we based it on was the annual salary, so that's my fault. It is based on their annual salary. It does not take into account if they get an increase in July. But we looked at what they're paid for the rest of this, for the whole year, not just through the rest of this fiscal year.
So that dollar figure
So
would
that
be
274 would cover for the year,
the year.
like you asked.
Okay, so would it be fair to make the assessment then to cover those just to make sure I understand properly, and I apologize. So for this current fiscal year, it would not cost an additional $274,000 to provide that 3 to 5% pay
That would be
increase?
correct, because we're only basing that, if you're looking at the rest of the, we have months.
Yes,
versus
ma'am.
The whole year, yes, sir.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yes, yes.
That answers all my questions. Thank you so much.
Now, since Sheriff Giles is online, does anybody else have any questions to ask him directly? Well, I'll ask one question. Since you're here with us, how many things, you might have answered this before, how many people do you think you lose a year to the salary difference, and how hard is it to recruit without the, to compete with the surrounding counties that give more money?
Well, it's just like the fire department. I mean, we go to a regional academy where salaries are spoken about and starting salaries versus what we're making, and it is hard to compete. I really truly haven't lost anybody, but it would be in the future because there's talk around the office about doing that, about moving, because they want to be up closer to Fredericksburg and the pay's better, and it is a future thing that I'm worried about retention quite a bit.
Thank you. Mr. Bush? Okay, not a question for the sheriff? Thank you, Sheriff Giles, for coming online there.
I apologize for not being there.
No, that's all right. I understand. Yeah, do your job. It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And keeping our numbers down, yep.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam
Bush.
Chair. The one thing I do want to point out, I like the fact that what you guys built out, Dr. Young, staff, Chief Moody, and Sheriff Giles, these are targeted raises. It's not across the board. So I really like that. It's really showing where our needs are, where those specialties are that we heavily rely on. So I do like the fact that it was a targeted approach, not across the board. But a question is, how many counties have already implemented their new compensation plans effective, let's say, immediately? Because if we do wait to implement this into our new fiscal year, that's 5 months that we could potentially be losing people. And if the numbers are where they are right now, that could take us down to where we do have to cut a shift. And I got a feeling the first shift that'll be cut is Company 3 in Fairview Beach, which is my district, and that side of the county. I need Company 3 functioning. So that's my question. What we're looking at right now with those who we're competing with in that region behind me, how many have already implemented their plans effective immediately that we're competing with today?
Yes, sir. Prince William has updated their compensation structure, which was the kickoff for the domino effect in the region. Prince William adopted their policy, then Spotsylvania, Stafford. Currently, I have held discussions with both the county administrators of Caroline and Westmoreland, and they're basically watching this whole new market and what all these neighboring localities are doing, and they're going to respond in kind as well. So at the moment, Spotsylvania, Stafford, and Prince William, but you can certainly expect to see a new compensation structure for the public safety professionals in Caroline and Westmoreland.
Thank you. So following the budget work session that we held when these numbers were initially presented, showing the gaps between all the localities and the pay disparity, I shared that on my Facebook. Now, not everybody comments on Facebook, but I did engage citizens and had some phone calls and emails from citizens asking me about that. And what was suggested by quite a few people is, well, why aren't you ramping up your volunteer efforts? I myself asked that question over a year ago, and I said, Chief, why are you guys that it doesn't cost the county anything? With all the additional training and requirements that are out there, you can't just simply show up at a fire station and say, I want to volunteer. Westmoreland County relied heavily upon their volunteer corps. I know of 2 rescue squads that have literally locked the doors and turned in the keys. They're not operational. In fact, they're not even responding to some calls in Westmoreland because they were so reliant on their volunteer services. They're going full-time. So I know we want to wait, and I appreciate everything, but I agree we need some real numbers to look at, okay? But I would like to entertain not adopting the portion. I would actually like to entertain adopting the whole package that was presented. And it's time to address fire rescue. It's a public safety need. That's my opinion, but I know it's gonna hurt. Nothing's free. But I think this is something, just like when we've had to address the needs of the schools in the past, this is a direct impact to public safety. And I believe we need to address it head on. And if this is the way to get people to stay on, to come join, I believe this is what we got to do. So I'm in favor of looking at the whole package, Madam Chair, however y'all want to handle it, whenever y'all want to do to address it. I would like to do it as soon as possible, but my preference would be for the whole package that was presented, not portion it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. My question, so that bottom, that is an estimate of what it would cost to the end of the fiscal year?
No, annually.
Okay, so annually, so starting next budgetary cycle.
Well, yes, ma'am, July
Okay.
1st.
As
Except for the employee compensation, the 3 to 5% pay increase, which is
So
$274,000, that'd be this fiscal year.
I'm just trying to clarify, because I'm sure there's other people in the public that
Yes, ma'am.
might have the same question. So if, for now, what we can do is the 3 to 5 pay increase, right? That
Yes,
would
ma'am.
cost 200, that would be to the end of this fiscal year, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then if we approved everything for the next budgetary cycle, then it would be possibly that amount.
Yes, ma'am. That's worst case scenario. Again, it's not likely to hit that amount, but that's what we wanted to plan for, worst case scenario.
So what we could do tonight, if everyone was in agreement on it, is to approve the 3 to 5% for the end of the fiscal year, and that we would consider in our next budget the whole package. Would that be about right? Okay, that's why I just want to clarify that, so we're all.
Does that make, how competitive, just the percentage raise or percentage raises, how competitive does that make us? I mean, is that something that, hey, we did it, or is that something that's truly going to impact retention?
Fire chief is definitely going to reply to that, but admittedly, for our starting salaries, it'll bring us closer. It's not the end-all, be-all. That's why we have these other benefits that we're putting on the table. So it's not the end-all, be-all solution. It brings us closer to being competitive, but no matter, to be honest with you, we cannot financially afford to get those salary increases up and competitive with something like a Prince William or a Stafford County.
Yeah.
I mean, it require, like we said, we can look at it here.
Yeah, you can't go dollar for dollar. I think that's made clear. So what I gathered from your initial presentation was, it's not just a percentage raise up front that's going to help us with recruitment and retention. It's the entire package that is what's going to be attractive
Yes, sir.
to bring in talent and retain talent. So I don't think by simply passing a measure for the percentage raises, I mean, we're doing something to do something, but is it impactful? And I'm looking at what can we do to make sure for the next 5 months, we're not losing a shift. That's my overall concern. So if the percentages were an enticement and it would keep people here or keep people coming in, absolutely. But based on your initial presentation, I don't think that by itself does the job. I think it was the entirety of the package that you put together, being that we can't compete dollar for dollar with, say, a Spotsy or another larger locality.
But I would hope that they would know we're making this presentation and we're talking about it here, that they know that for the next budget cycle, we are really, really considering this as their as their package, as part of our budget, that we're gonna do this for them. I would hope that they would understand that too, than leaving us. We have a lot of dedicated paid personnel. But Ms. Kupka has a,
Madam Chair, if I may, I fully understand where you're coming from, Mr. Bush. In another lifetime, I was a first responder.
I know.
My husband still is. I want to do everything we can for our fire rescue, EMS, and our sheriff's deputies. But for me personally, right now, I respectfully defer to county administrator's recommendation for us, which is for tonight, the 3 to 5% pay increase for the remainder of this current fiscal year. And then let's slow down. Let's have a more in-depth conversation at our next budget work session to make sure we're making an informed decision about the entire county budget, because the reality of the public health situation right now, while I know we can't afford to lose people right now, we just don't know financially what's headed our way, and we need to be responsible to all of our citizens in the county. I hate to make that recommendation, but I feel like we need to slow down just a little bit. I would hope that the respective staffs understand the difficult position we're in right now, all of the considerations we have to make, and that hopefully they would see this as good faith, that we want to do something for them. We just need a little bit more time to consider the situation. That's all.
that was nicely said. That's what I wanted to say. Mr. Granger, did you have?
I agree with Ms. Kupka. It's not that I'm against it, but at this point, we'd be making the decision to move forward with an increase to our budget by $1 million. And we definitely need to do something now. I would like to do all of it. But when we get to the next budget work session, we might look and say, hey, we can do 3 of the 5, we can do 4 of the 5. But if we decide tonight to do all 5 of 5, we've committed. We can't take something away once we give it. I mean, then it's there. So I think we should go with the pay increase and then seriously look at doing the rest as well for the next fiscal year. But we need to look at all of the budget.
Mr. Stonehill?
I would agree with that as well. Of course, I would love to say, yeah, right now, let's go ahead with the full Monty, but I just think, I agree in this time right now of what we got going on right now, I think we need to wait. But, you know, I want to make sure that all of them, all fire rescue and sheriff's office and everybody knows that we will do something. You know, it's not if we're going to do something. We are definitely going to do something. But I would agree with Dr. Young's recommendation for, you know, for the next 5 months or what that was. It's hard to kind of follow along on the PowerPoint, but I would recommend what he went with.
Mr.
Sorry. Oh, so my question, under the certification pay, the people that you said that were leaving the county were dual certified, correct? That was firefighter, paramedics?
Yes, sir.
Okay, which is what our critical need is, at least in my opinion. Is there a way, that cost is coming in, what is it, $152,000?
Yes.
So instead of implementing the whole thing, would a combination of the percentage raise and then the certification pay to make it attractive for those critically targeted people that we need, could we do that instead of implementing the full package? Because it makes sense what y'all are saying. Would implementing the certification pay with the pay raises, would that be enough to pump the brakes on losing people or actually bring some people in? And is that something that we could absorb financially now? I know $1 million is a lot. I agree. You bring up some valid points. But will we consider adding the certification pay to the percentage pay?
I'm willing to entertain that. I guess my real question would be, since Dr. Young had made the comment that he was asking for the board to transfer funds in the amount of $274,000 from the contingency to the general fund, is that correct?
From the general fund balance.
Sorry. Thank you, though.
That's fine.
But after hearing from Ms. Sumiel, I guess it would not actually be $274,000 to cover the cost of this current year for the 3 to 5% pay raise. And so if that dollar figure could also cover the certification pay, I think I'd be comfortable with saying, let's do both of those and move forward with doing those in the years to come as well. And then entertain the other three as well as we go through the rest of the budget work session.
Madam Chair, if I may, I want to advise that what we're asking for the $274,000 or the pay increases, we weren't asking for pay increases just for the next 5 months. We were asking for, literally, we're raising pay increases for public safety professionals into perpetuity. So I just want you all to have that data point in your policy decision. Second, I know that we want to discuss the remaining benefits in subsequent work sessions, but we won't be able to do it at the next budget work session. We actually will have to take a look at this after we do revenue projections. And as you all know, revenue projections are probably 30 to 45 days out. So once we can project our revenues and see how we're going to be financially impacted, then we'd be in a better position to say what we can afford and what we can't afford. I'm sorry, Chief.
I just have 2 points that I want to add after y'all's discussion. Real quick, the question that you asked, Mr. Granger, is certainly very valid point. That 274 that Dr. Young was asking for, these were annual projections, and I did confirm that with our spreadsheet and with Amanda Samuel. That includes the increase in the benefit cost. When you increase a person's salary, you're going to have a compounded effect to benefits. We're in the third quarter of our budget cycle in this current year. So we're looking at $68,550 per quarter. So that was annual. So if obviously we're not going to retroact it. So there's going to be not that certainly that full amount this year is what we're, so that fiscal impact will be reduced. The second point I want to make is I know Dr. Young don't take a lot of credit for himself, but we worked together and had a lot of conversations, myself, him, Sheriff Giles, Human Resources Director, Director of Finance, and really sat down at the table and thought of some ways out of the box that we could look at boosting and having a more robust recruitment and retention program. This $3,000 for paramedic you may see, Spotsylvania is advertising $7,000 and Stafford's doing $10,000. So we're looking, these are the skill sets. We're investing months and years to train an individual, and tuition costs are very high. And once they get that skill set, they become very marketable, and our neighbors know that. So, we really worked very closely to come up with this out-of-the-box thinking to how can we market this to do something that other folks are not doing, and boost and have a more robust recruitment and retention program. So whether it's phased-in approach, I certainly get it. We're dealing with a national emergency, a regional emergency. We don't know the cause and effect that's going to have. But I just wanted to thank the team that worked on this because I think everybody knows it's certainly important. But I did want to hit the point that of the numbers, and the numbers would not be that just for the 3 to 5%. If we implemented it next pay period, we're already 3/4 of the way in the budget year. Now it will have an impact, the full 274 or more next year, July 1 to June 30th.
Tracking, and it totally makes sense. I appreciate it. Thank you, though.
Madam Chair, if I may, so I didn't answer Mr. Bush's question on if we could financially afford the certification pay. While I'm hesitant to really dive into that unknown of what fiscal year 2021 will look like, if the board did want to consider adding approving certification pay with those numbers, and those are what would you say, sir? Not non-recurring, but, what's the word that you utilized? Non-compounding.
Non-compounding.
Yeah, non-compounding costs. I think that, we can afford that, and I think that, we'd be able to, we'd be comfortable recommending, adopting that, you know, with the understanding that that's gonna have an impact on our budget for fiscal year 2021.
I'm not opposed to that because I know how important it is for you. You get all this training, you get all this education, and there's a cost to it, and they should be compensated for having the initiative to go and getting that training and that certification. And we need to support that and encourage that in our staff. Ms. Kupka, did you have a?
I can live with that. I would note the effective date on this one is not immediately. It is effective July 1st, 2020. So I'd be comfortable with that. And then obviously knowing that that's consideration that needs to be made during the budget work sessions, that now we're already looking at the 274 and the 152, and we'll go from there.
So let's make sure I understand you, Ms. Cup, correctly. You're saying leave the effective date as July 1st. We're just saying we are implementing this program and it will go into effect July 1st. Is that what you're saying?
So I guess I'm confused because I thought it was to do this, but as it is up there, which says effective date July 1st, 2020.
I think Mr. Bush's intention was to say, let's pull the trigger
Implement
now
both
and make it
immediately.
the policy that it's in place currently, actively.
Now the question is, when does the fourth quarter start? What's the effective date of the?
April?
April, is it April 1st?
April, right?
Could we make it effective April 1st?
Well, for this,
So it's only like 37,000, what, a quarter of 152, right?
no,
Half
ma'am, because
152.
this is like almost like a bonus, a one-time bonus per year.
Right.
So it's not a salary. So if you all did approve this, like if you all approve this tonight, literally, finance department will get busy on actually writing bonuses for everybody with these certifications. So quarterly, it's not a quarter thing, it's a one-time payment,
So what if
annually.
So what if we approve doing the certification pay starting July 1 in the new fiscal year, and also the 3 to 5 in the new fiscal, but the 3 to 5 starting April 1st? Would that, what does everybody feel about that? It's okay. Mr. Stonehill, you could chime in if you want to.
Well, when I need to.
I'm of a mind to, if we move forward with certification now, from a retention and recruiting perspective, especially retention, all those who have these certifications currently would get the bonus this fiscal year. And then when July comes around, I know it's quick turnaround for us, but it's nice. I think it would be nice from a retention perspective to look at it and say, hey, they're giving us now, and then we're gonna get it again in the new fiscal year, which is just a quarter away. I understand that that cost is the cost actually for this year as an estimate right now because it's a bonus.
How about we also could do both take effect April 1st.
I think that would be moot from that perspective because it
Well, you
I'll
just
do it.
put them in concert together, you know, the pay increases on it, the fourth quarter, and then that comes at the same time. That's all I was saying.
yeah,
just
I
so
understand.
you
What
guys-
I'm sorry. That's certainly, I think, reasonable.
What do you guys feel about that?
So I would like certification pay and the percentage pays to be effective 1 April. And then we revisit the rest whenever we have a full picture of what the impacts are. Is there a possible recession on the horizon? All those things, you know, we can then look at a more prudent time.
Mr. Stonehill?
I would be good with that.
Okay, do I have a motion? Or do we have to have a motion for this one?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I was gonna update my recommendation.
Go ahead.
Okay. Give me 1 second, ma'am. I recommend the board, okay, I'd recommend the board approve both the public safety employee compensation pay raise of 3 to 5% depending on years of service, and the authorization of certification special pay effective April 1st, and authorize the county administrator and finance department to transfer $230,000 from the general fund balance to the general fund balance and appropriate these monies to those two programs.
So moved.
Second.
Have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Thank you for all that put their effort and time into this.
And Mr. Granger, again, sir, I want to apologize. I knew that it was an annual number, but just caught up in the moment.
We move on to Fire and Rescue Department COVID-19 update. Chief Moody.
So, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors, for the viewers that are watching online, my name is David Moody. I am the County Fire and Rescue Chief. I also serve as your local emergency management coordinator. With me is Battalion Chief Stephen Lynn. Stephen Lynn is Battalion Chief on C Shift and also serves as the Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator. We have a presentation for you tonight, and I have a few notes to bring up. Bear with me. Tonight, what we'd like to do is certainly give you an overview in this presentation and provide you with the facts. Talk to you a little bit about the precautions, some of the actions that the department and also the county have taken. And obviously, I think everybody in here is very well aware of the current situation of COVID-19. Certainly want to put the disclaimer out there that none of this should be taken as medical advice, but rather just general public health information. So myself and Chief Lynn are going to walk through a couple of these slides. Some of these we're going to move fairly quickly on. We did want to give you a little bit of the timeline worldwide, nationally, and also regionally. In late 2019, we had cases of COVID-19 in China. That's where it originated. January 21st was the first reported case in the United States. January 31st, the president declares a U.S. public health emergency. March the 7th, first reported coronavirus case in Virginia. March 9th, a confirmed case in Spotsylvania County. March 11th, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic. March 12th, Virginia declared a state of emergency. March 13th, United States declares a national emergency. March 15th, a confirmed COVID case in Stafford County. March 16th, as of yesterday, King George County declares a local emergency. So here we're at today. These next few slides, I'm going to turn over to Chief Lynn. He's going to walk through a little bit of the infection control parts, and then I'll be picking up here in just a second.
Good evening. We're talking about what a pandemic is. It's a new disease outbreak, and there's no immunity to it, so it spreads really quickly through the community across the world. Some of the characteristics they're figuring out about the virus, and it's still pretty new, so the scientists are working on the details of it, and so some of this has changed a little bit, but this is what CDC and the Department of Health have said is the firm characteristics of the virus. It's a respiratory virus, very similar to the flu. We're still in the flu season, and Virginia had a major flu outbreak this year and throughout the nation. So the doctors were seeing a lot of flu cases, and now this has popped on top of it. They're saying the elderly is a higher risk, and people with serious underlying medical conditions, again, are other folks that are higher risk to this COVID-19. The World Health Organization believes that 80% of the people that will have this will have mild disease. mild symptoms and recover with no long-term impacts. The people, the elderly patients and the patients with COPD, asthma, heart disease, diabetes, those underlying medical conditions, those patients will have more severe impacts from this. How it's spread, through usually from coughs, nasal respiratory secretions. That's why they're, enforcing the, cover your cough, wash your hands, clean surfaces. The social distancing being away more at 6 feet or more away from each person. So if those droplets do come out, they drop to the ground and less chance of the next person being infected. Community spread, it was the travelers that came across on the airlines, and then they saw where spread to other people that didn't have a connection to that person that came off the airline or came off that cruise ship. So this is where we're at now with the community spread from just normal interaction with citizens and the public, and that's why you see the measures to the social distancing and avoid public places and to reduce that spread. Some of the treatments, obviously we know there's no vaccine for it now. They're in the process of testing that, early stages of that, and really it's just supportive care, treating the underlying symptoms that the patient will experience. The best way to treat this is prevention, that washing your hands, using the hand sanitizer, wiping down surfaces. If you're sick, stay home. We don't want people that are sick to go into the workplace, go into the public places. We want, the best treatment is to stay home and let this run its course. Some of the guidance, latest guidance from the CDC and VDH, and that's where we pull all our information from. We want to make sure the message we're putting out to the citizens is coming from the subject matter experts, and also what we're using internally to prepare our staff for this response is coming from the subject matter experts. And for us, it's the CDC and the Virginia Department of Health. Some highlights, and we pulled all this off of their websites, which we're going to show the links here at the end of the presentation. For people and what to do if they have certain symptoms, when should they call their doctor, what should they do at home, how to try to prevent it from spreading throughout their family and their neighbors in the community or at work. Telemedicine is becoming a big thing. Most insurance companies have an option for that, where you can do a virtual visit with some sort of healthcare provider, and they can provide treatment, write a prescription, give you supportive care based just using telemedicine. So many insurance companies are encouraging that now. One of the big things is cleaning and trying to sterilize and sanitize work surfaces and surfaces in your house and things you touch, doorknobs and stuff like that. And it's really important that the citizens either have commercial cleaners, or if they make their own bleach at home, their bleach cleaner, do it correctly to prevent any kind of serious consequences from that. And that's why we included this slide on there, how to make bleach, a water mixture, and how that only lasts good for about 24 hours, and you need to dump it and make a new mixture.
Just out of curiosity, why is that?
Because it breaks down, the bleach becomes less effective.
Interesting.
So then you have someone, well, I made this bleach mixture, so I think it's effective. And it may still have that bleach smell to it, but the percentage of the bleach is dropped down where it's not really effective anymore.
Okay.
Don't drink it, yes.
I like that one because when you showed that on Friday at the EOC, I went out and bought a plain bottle so you could put it in it and spray. I thought that was neat. I'd never thought about that before. But.
Because, you go to the grocery store, you see all the commercial cleaners are sold out. And so, we want citizens that are making stuff at home to do it the correct way and the safe way, that they have a safe cleaner and an effective cleaner.
Yeah, and I've seen bleach still out there. So you buy just a plastic spray bottle, some bleach, add water.
Yes, ma'am.
Great insight.
Actions to be taken, and we brought this up in a meeting there at EOC. This is not going to be a short-term event. It's going to go on for a while, and how the social distancing works, and the stay at home and cleaning the surfaces really going to depend on how long we're going to see this COVID-19 in our community and throughout the nation. Social distancing is the #1 priority recommendation. That's why you see the schools are closed and public events being canceled and all that, just to keep those massive people in close proximity from happening. Pandemic, some of the policies that we talk about is we refer back to our protocols. We do have a pandemic plan, and we're in process. We brought that up at the EOC briefing, and we're updating that now to make sure it's capturing the most accurate information from the CDC and BDH. And the last bullet is really important, stay informed. And that's what we want the public to do. And we're hoping that the way we craft our message using the county website, KG Alert, is helping get good information out to the citizens. They go to a one-stop shop to get the information of all the county services that are being impacted. And so there's no confusion about something's open, something's been canceled, those kinds of things.
Ms. Bender, you had in your supervisor report, you mentioned a lot of these things we just talked about. We felt that it was important not only just to the folks here in this room, but also the viewers that may be watching online that are the citizens. And one thing that we're going to do, I haven't discussed this with Dr. Young yet, but we'd like to put this on the county website, this briefing, so people can go back and see these slides anytime they click on the county website. We have some COVID-19 information that's out there with links and such like that for them to get the most latest information. I want to talk to you real quick. I want to show you this chart. I also provided a link of this map. So this is a public map anybody can go to anytime. This is through Johns Hopkins University. And one of the things, the reason why I like this is because it talks about something that you don't see every day in the media. Media is talking about COVID-19 on a 24-hour basis. But right up in your upper right-hand corner, those are the cases that are reporting to be recovered. So if we have 189,000 confirmed cases worldwide, of those, the countries, and if you scroll down, it doesn't just have one for the United States, it has it per state. It's broken down per state. But 80,000 of those 189, 80,643 from the time we screenshotted this, are reporting to have recovered from this. So, so they're no longer symptomatic. They got the virus and now they're better. So just wanted to point that out. There is a link at the end. I would ask, if folks to share this, but again, this is not a CDC or Virginia Department of Health. It's Johns Hopkins University. Just nationwide, this is where we were as of earlier today. This could have changed. As we said, as Ms. Bender mentioned earlier, and I mentioned at our briefing in the EOC on Friday, this is a very fluid situation. We are in changing by the hour. So, but this is where it was earlier. You can see where most of your cases are across the country. We're not only just tracking Virginia, we're tracking Maryland too. We certainly have a direct access right across the river. So we're seeing what's going on around the PG County, Montgomery County area. But you can see most of the cases in Northern Virginia. King George County does not, as of right now, have a confirmed case. We had a little scare earlier this afternoon. That was myth busted, okay? We had the information that was found from that scare was the patient was diagnosed with a respiratory illness and virus, like that can happen this time of year, and made the assumption amongst themselves to say that it was coronavirus. And so the employer then reported that, but we have been in direct contact and constant communication with the Rappahannock Area Health District, an arm of VDH, and they reported that to us. They have been in contact with that patient. So this is the information that we're sharing out there. We got a number of different CDC bulletins, but this is just an example of one. Fever, cough, shortness of breath are the main key symptoms. I want to talk to you. This is where we're really getting into the meat of the issue, and that's our local actions that your county government has been doing since ramping up since we have. This has become certainly a regional issue. On Friday, all department heads, directors, constitutional officers, schools, King George Health Department, Rappahannock Area Health District, all the stakeholders met in the EOC for a briefing on COVID-19, its impacts, its plan to maintain essential county services. And I would be remiss if I didn't add Ms. Bender and Mr. Stonehill, representing the King George County Board of Supervisors. Some of the actions taken, the big key takeaway from that with Dr. Young's leadership was we established a three-phase tiered approach, and I have a slide that we're going to talk about that too. We are certainly gearing up, preparing all employees. All non-essential programs are being suspended, parks and rec activities, library programs, 300th anniversary events. County offices, a decision has been made this week that county offices would close early to the public, but employees would stay and use that remaining time to help disinfect the building, the offices, the phones, all the high-touch items, door handles, etc. Liberal sick leave was in effect. Obviously, we understand there's a direct relationship when the schools close to parents that work that are county employees and may have to have small children, can't stay home by themselves. Also, if they were to become ill. Official but non-essential travel is suspended for all employees countywide. Some other additional local actions, and this is a little bit more on the public safety side, but preparing all public safety responders, that's firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, sheriff's office deputies, etc. We have established a 911 pre-screening. So if a citizen calls and says, hey, I'm having coughing, shortness of breath, and I'm having a fever, okay? Or if they just call for a general illness call 911 and they need an ambulance. Our 911 communication dispatchers are pre-screening each individual, and if they meet the screening, we're notified so we can wear the proper PPE and body substance isolation to protect ourselves. We have inventoried all of our department personal protective equipment and body substance isolation. We have adequate inventory supplies as we speak today, and so does the sheriff's office. We've increased hygiene and office building disinfection, and that's countywide. That's all county buildings, all fire stations, etc., all ambulances, units. We're in constant communication with the Department of Emergency Management. We're also in constant communication with our area health department through VDH. We're coordinating with the high-risk businesses, okay? We know that nursing homes are a high target area. So we've already conducted outreach with them. We've been in contact with both of our main urgent cares that we have in the county. Public messaging, obviously it's very important that we're putting out the facts. We're not putting out opinionated articles or anything that's on any of the stuff you may see on the internet. We're also suppressing rumor control, and some of that is a testament example of what we had this afternoon. We've declared a local emergency as of yesterday. This allows us to operate in the county's emergency operations plan, to activate an EOC if we have to have some enhanced procurement processes if we had to go out and order masks and gloves and gowns and everything else. We also have an annex to our emergency operations plan called a pandemic annex. We've been preparing for this since avian flu, swine flu, Zika virus, and Ebola. So we have had an entourage over the years of scares, just never to one that has reached at this level. These are some of the discussion items, the same thing that the other supervisors saw on Friday. But these are all some of the things that we had a roundtable and dialogue discussion about. A lot of these things I've already covered. A lot of these things have already been updated since then about modifications in their programs. Okay, this is this continuity of operation strategy that we came away with. Some of these, understanding that this is a very fluid situation, just an example of that, a testament of that, we came in there, we went to the schools had a plan. within a matter of 30 minutes, the governor came down and authorized all public schools closed. So that was a change of plan just in the time we were in the EOC. We have, you can see, we have a green phase, an amber phase, and a red phase. Today, we have gone to the amber phase. And in fact, one of the red phases, items to declaration of local emergency, we have already completed that we can make, and that Dr. Young could get board consensus fairly quickly. The decision point for the amber phase is the overall amount of staff on sick leave is 10%, which is 26 people. We are tracking that. However, the good news is we don't have 26 people out sick. Amanda Samuel, Amanda's here or not, but she is
Actually, on my last update from Human Resources in our survey, we have one employee that's out sick, but it's not related to sickness, it's related to a surgery.
So we are certainly tracking the outages in different, kind of the reasons why they may be out and predicted how long they may be out. And then the red phase, the trigger point or decision point, is one confirmed or presumptive case of COVID-19 in King George, which we do not have as of today, and an overall amount of staff on sick leave that exceeds the 10% or exceeding 26 people. With that, we would be in a full red phase approach for our continuity of operations. That could consist of altering different operating hours, some services being reduced, some being ramped up, so et cetera.
And Chief, if I can stop you there, can we
Yes,
go
sir.
back to that slide?
Mm-hmm.
So board, just to advise you, we need to make a change to this approach. And that's after having a conversation with our fire chief, with Human Resources, and in light of the new announcement that was made to the updating of the guidelines by Governor Northam. Rather than have the telework authorized be a part of the amber phase, I would like for us to we're going to move forward with authorizing telework for county employees and encouraging that for those individuals that were identified as high risk in the governor's updated guidelines. And public access, as you all already know, is limited currently. As you all know, we're not allowing meetings in county offices, only in the boardroom and only if absolutely necessary. So I really think that the amber phase is not relevant now. And I think to make it more relevant is that we go ahead and update amber phase to say close county buildings to public access. And that would be the amber phase, with the red phase being that the EOC is stood up and county offices reduce service or temporarily close.
I concur, but could we, if we already declared a declaration of local emergency, shouldn't that be bumped up too?
Well, the declaration of emergency has been declared, so that's going to be updated because we've already, as a result of the regional effort, declared a local emergency. So we're going to remove that as one of the actions of red phase, and the only remaining actions will be fully standing up the EOC and potentially reducing services and closing county offices. Amber phase again would be county employees will still be working in county offices, but those offices would be closed to the general public.
And just to clarify, Governor Northam did put some restrictions on age levels of employees and that have to telework, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And we definitely want to follow the governor's guidelines, and we definitely want to provide our high-risk employees an opportunity to telework.
Thank you. Mr. Granger, you one?
So have the constitutional officers been consulted regarding their viewpoints on this? Because we're talking about 3 of them here in this building that would be affected. So I'd be curious to see if their input was considered.
I spoke directly with the treasurer's office, and they are taking a more cautious approach. And it's my understanding, I don't want to speak for the treasurer, but it's his intent, from my understanding, to close his office to public access, to the general public tomorrow. And I'm hearing that the Commissioner of Revenue is planning on doing the same.
Thank you. And I would note the treasurer's office we have online bill payment abilities, right?
That's correct.
And
Yes,
so
ma'am.
that's available.
Yes, ma'am. And one challenge that would be brought up by the general public about that is that, well, if you go online, there's a service fee that's associated with utilizing online services.
Can we waive that just for the course of this? Is that,
Well, yeah, the treasurer is actually
or
coming up
he,
in his
sorry.
budget to pay for it. So out of his budget, so he's currently working on a plan with the finance department if he does decide to move forward with closing his offices to the general public.
I know there's the box outside as well that you can put your payments in.
Yes, sir.
Will they still be pulling from that if
Yes,
people
sir.
physically come by to? Okay.
Yes, sir. Roger.
How about our courthouse and that? What is their plan?
If you give me a second, ma'am, I can tell you. The courthouse are taking guidelines from the state. Matter of fact, this is being from the Supreme Court of Virginia. They're directing altered. They're not directing that courts be closed, but they are directing the alteration to courts. According to Vic, on a court order on March 16, 2020, addressing non-essential, non-emergency judicial proceedings and other proceedings as directed by the Supreme Court of Virginia, they are going to be suspending those non-essential court cases, but they're still going to maintain like their criminal cases because of the right to swift justice. So, you know, there's constitutional concerns with closing the courts altogether. So they will be altering. However, they are also complying with the county approach of closing their offices at 3:30 p.m. to sanitize their facilities.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I actually, Madam Chair, I had a question. I'm sorry, Chief Moody, are you all finished with your presentation?
We just got a couple more slides and.
Go ahead.
Dr. Young,
Yes,
anything
I'm
else?
sorry.
Okay. And Chief Lynn's gonna talk real quick about public messaging. So our ways to get the message out to the public, obviously the first one's the county website, and we'll have the links in at the conclusion of this. Our KG alert system is our text messaging system, and we encourage citizens to make sure they're registered for KG alert. They get a new phone number, new email address, update that. They have issues, there's a way they can send an email to us, and we'll get on it and go in their account and figure out what the problem is and get that fixed. And also on our Facebook page, King George Fire, if you notice, we now have the blue check mark. We went through the process with Facebook to get our Facebook page verified. And so the citizens can come to our page and know that it's vetted information there, and it's an official voice for the fire department and emergency management. So our Facebook page is King George Fire. The website, as mentioned, the county website, our Facebook page, kgalert.com, links to Virginia Department of Health and also CDC. Their webpage. Actions the public can take. The big one is social distancing, washing hands, cover your cough, avoid large crowds. You know, if you have a fever, if you're sick, stay home. Don't spread the virus in the community, at the workplace, in large crowds, at churches, at schools, in you know, Walmart. Limit non-essential travel. You know, try to stay at home and avoid those large crowds. Follow official information. There's so much information out there now, real information and then non-official information, people's thoughts on, you know, the virus and how to make sanitizers and stuff like that. So we want the citizens to be prepared, but also, you know, have good information and be safe.
So that's actually exactly what my question was about. The last point, follow official information, and your prior slide, public messaging. And a suggestion, I don't know how you all feel about this, but in order to try to not have a rumor mill like we did today, is there a way we can explain how, just put out a slide or some kind of explanation as to how cases are officially diagnosed, and that information, that that people are going to their doctor and their doctors are making decision points based on the Virginia Department of Health, like what they talked to us about last night was the 3 different categories of people that are being tested, high risk and exposed to someone, and so forth. So doctors are making the decision to test their patients, and the patients get a test, and the test results get reported to Virginia Department of Health, right? And then
That's correct.
Virginia Department of Health notifies the locality, you have a confirmed test result in your locality, right? So we really, it's super important that we get the word out to the citizens that there is a system set up for this, and this is how the system works, and we need to respect that system and trust that system to get the information to our community regarding positive test results.
Absolutely.
Is there a way we can, would you have a recommendation? Is there something you can put out to let people know so that we don't have another thing like we did today?
Yeah, well, let me hit on that on 2 points real quick. One is we already have, if you click on the county's website and you go to the COVID-19 information, we already have put in some myths versus facts, okay? And we put some of that in there. The testing piece hasn't been touched on yet, and the reason why is because it's evolving every day. Let me see what they have. Let me see what good vetted public information is out there, and then we'll put that out as part of that package. I'm sure there's something we can get a hold of. We already have about 4 to 5 different bulletins that is on the county website. We have all the links to certainly the CDC and VDH. So let's see what we can come up with. It's a valid point, and the key takeaway is that everybody that has a fever or that has a cough or that has any shortness of breath does not automatically mean that you have this coronavirus. There's still bacterial infections. There's still
Allergies.
There's strep throat. There's the whole gamut of everything we deal with every day. Regular influenza. That's right. And just according to CDC, they average 60,000 deaths a year that are contributed to seasonal influenza. And this is, I know you've heard the reminders out there, and kind of comparing the two, but yeah, those are out there, and we're still right at the height of it. And it's not too late to, from what the public health experts are telling us, it's not too late to still get vaccinated for influenza. So that's also, still a public message.
Well, I appreciate you doing this because, as of Friday, I was pushing to make sure we had our public messaging out there. So you stop rumors and you fact check and you just give people information. And I really do appreciate that. And you mentioned John Hopkins earlier. I watched a incredible video of an interview with one of the researchers at John Hopkins, and they gave very valuable information about, the spread and all that and different things that I had heard, but that's vetted information because it comes from John Hopkins and their researchers. Ms. Cuppy, did you have anything else? I know I kind of cut you off there.
No, thank you. Thanks very much for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Richard, did you have? Mr. Stonehill.
No, I'm good. I just wanted to thank those guys tremendously for everything they're doing. And just to reiterate, sources of information, you all talked about Johns Hopkins, the Mayo Clinic. They had a very good informational website out as well, plus the CDC. But, thanks to you guys again.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so we're moving past the public hearings, which we're not having, and we're going to their action items in the county attorney contract.
Yes, the board, as you as you already know, you all gave us specific guidance regarding the recruitment and the execution of a contract with an internal hire for a county employee. We was able to successfully negotiate a contract, which I have before you, and We believe that those, the terms of the contract are in accordance with the guidance that's been put before us by the Board of Supervisors. So I would like to request permission that the King George County Board of Supervisors authorize the county chairman to execute an employment contract for the King George County attorney with Mr. Matt Britton.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye. Thank you for everybody that was involved in this process. Oh, motion carries. Next up is declaration of emergency adoption.
Yes, Madam Chair, as the board is aware, we did declare a local emergency yesterday at 8:50 p.m. In accordance with state code. In addition, state code requires that upon declaring an emergency, it must be adopted by the Board of Supervisors within a 45-day time period. I'm sorry. So I have before you a resolution adopting the proposed resolution. At a regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors of King George County, Virginia, held at the Rivercomb Building, Boardroom 10459, Courthouse Drive on March 17, 2020, the following declaration was adopted declaring a local emergency to exist in King George County, Virginia. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of the County of King George, Virginia, does hereby finds as follows, that due to the potential spread of the coronavirus, COVID-19, in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the greater region, the County of King George is facing or experiencing a condition of extreme peril to the lives, safety, and property of the residents of King George County, and that as a result of this extreme peril, the declaration of the existence of an emergency is necessary to permit the full powers of government to deal effectively with this condition of peril, and that this state of local emergency shall begin retroactively at 8:50 p.m. on March 16, 2020, thereby serving as the Board of Supervisors' expression of consent to and confirmation of the declaration of a local emergency by the county administrator pursuant to his authority as the county's Director of Emergency Management, and that this state of a local emergency shall end when this condition of peril has abated or at 4:30 p.m. on April 16, 2020. Now therefore it is hereby declared by the Board of Supervisors of the County of King George, Virginia, that a local emergency exists throughout the County of King George, Virginia, and it further declared and ordered that during the existence of this emergency, the powers, functions, and duties of the Director of Emergency Management and the Emergency Management Organization and functions of the County of King George are those prescribed by the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia and the ordinances, resolutions, and approved plans of the County of King George in order to mitigate the effects of said emergency. I would recommend that the board adopt the resolution as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? No nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. County Administrator's report.
Yes, ma'am. I just have one thing on my report. Given the current state of affairs in the national economy and the regional economy, I believe that there's a little uncertainty on what the fiscal impact of this emergency is going to have on King George County's budget. So in light of that fact, I'd recommend that we cancel tomorrow's work session. And I'd ask to schedule another work session date 2 weeks from now. And I think that will give us an opportunity to have a clearer picture of what's going on and how long we're going to be going through this emergency, and allow us to put together some better numbers that we think are more fitting for the current state of affairs and going into the next fiscal year.
I move to cancel the meeting for tomorrow.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
So, Dr. Young, you said you would, do you want to schedule the meeting now for in 2 weeks for maybe next the 31st, or do you want to hold off?
Yes, sir. I'd like to go ahead and schedule a meeting or if the board would mind, for the week of March 30th.
I'm amenable to that.
Yeah, that's fine.
31st is a Tuesday, which we normally meet on, and that would work for me if it works for everyone else.
I'm amenable to that as well. However, I do have a question. Is is the delay with us meeting over the budget going to affect what we see from Dr. Benson and the schools? Or is this meeting just going to be to get apprised of what our financial situation is or what the projections are going to be? Or are we going to be discussing the school's budget, which we still have to figure that out and plug that in and have a meeting with the schools?
Yes, sir. We were going to dedicate tomorrow's work session to the school budget presentation.
Yep.
But like us, Dr. Benson is also monitoring the situation and preparing this presentation in accordance with the current state of affairs. So I expect that at the next budget work session that's being planned now, we'll be able to bring the school budget for presentation, and we should have a clearer picture of updated department expenditures for our county departments. I've talked with our county departments and directors and explained to them that we need to tighten our belt, go back to the drawing board on your department requests, and identify more opportunities in the respective line items to reduce costs.
Yeah.
So we're basically starting the process all over again. They're currently actioning that now, and that's what I'd be more comfortable bringing before the board going into the next fiscal year.
So that next meeting would
Probably a
contain
combination of both.
schools
and
and the future projections.
the future expenditures
Gotcha.
from the county as a whole.
31st, was everyone?
I'm fine with that.
That works for me.
Mr. Stonehill?
31st Tuesday is good.
All right, so then that's the date,
At
So the only
6
thing-
p.m.
6 p.m. will work.
in here in the boardroom, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I'll send you the location, but 9 times out of 10, it is going to be right here in the
Okay.
boardroom since.
That'll work.
So that brings up another thing to consider. So we have our budget advisory committee. Do we want to notify them there is no meeting tomorrow? 2, notify them when the next meeting is. But 3, do we want to consider limiting presence of additional people? Or, I mean, how do we want to move forward with that, with these work sessions?
I might be wise and make it available through a telepresence still.
I would agree with that since if we're still under the 10 people limit.
Yep.
While we're on the topic, I know it was addressed, some of the other citizen committees, but have we made it clear that none of them should be meeting?
Yes, ma'am. We've been talking with all our
We have the tourism committee and the
Yes, ma'am. In fact,
infrastructure committee and
yes,
the,
ma'am.
okay, I just
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
make it clear that those meetings are canceled too.
yes, ma'am. We identified those as non-essential meetings, and they have been notified or are being notified. In addition, we also notified our third-party organizations that meet in here that they won't be meeting either. So.
Very good.
Thank you. So do you have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn to Tuesday, March 31st at 6:00 PM.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, we are adjourned.